Okay, I'm Bosco Henriques, and I essentially have started a company called Biodye India Private Limited, which specializes in natural dyeing. We do all sorts of natural dyeing in the sense that we give whatever color you desire, and we dye everything from yarn, fabric to apparel, and all types of natural fibers, be it cellulosic like linen, cotton, jute, hemp, or proteinaceous fibers such as silk, wool, pashmina. And we have a dye house presently in Sawantwadi, but we will be moving from there to Nasik. So I entered the field of natural dyeing accidentally because my colleague wanted to essentially develop jet blacks and fast yellows. And I managed to do that with my background in molecular biology because that gave me an idea of how to proceed. My contribution to natural dyes essentially has been in developing fast colors, getting lac onto cotton, developing jet blacks which don't bleed and fade, then indigos which are bright blue, similar to the Japanese blues, and the colors are fast, they rub fastest and wash fastest are market acceptable ratings around 3-4. And and we can, if a designer gives us a Pantone shade, we can come quite close to matching it reproducibly. So I think that is what, just a little background about me and my company. See, textiles is one of, the most polluting industry, but that was never the case. India was a world leader in textiles before we got colonized. And at that time, our dyeing and our completely textile manufacturing processes were not polluting at all. It was only when synthetic dyes came to the fore and when fast fashion came along, that entire thing got magnified. So today, every 15 years, the amount of textile use is doubling. So there has to be some method by which that is arrested. So the European Union, for example, has taken a serious note of it, and now they want to essentially, their new mantra is, fast fashion should be out of fashion. So what do we do to be sustainable? So we have to look at all the stages of sustainability. For example, all synthetic fibers made from petroleum products, they are essentially non-biodegradable, and they just accumulate in landfills. So the fabric made from that just accumulates in landfills, and most importantly, when they are washed or even when they are being made, they shed a lot of microfibers which enter all parts of our planet, including our own bodies. So that the lesser we use these type of synthetic fibers, the better it is. Then we come to synthetic fibers which are cellulosic in nature, which are basically the rayons. So you have two types of rayons, viscoses and lyocells. Now the lyocells in particular are very sustainable in nature. The only problem is the production process, because they generally depend on forests, and these forests are monocultures, the same type of tree growing in large swaths of land. So as a result of which there's no biodiversity over there, and these days they're being classified, people are calling them green deserts. So we just have to look into that process, that aspect also. The second thing is they don't support any flora or fauna over there. That's why they're called green deserts. Then some things like eucalyptus, which make tencel. So these things, take up a lot of water from the soil, as a result of which, there is a soil water depletion. Of course, Lenzing claims that they plant these trees in, strategic places where they will not face a water shortage. So they plant them mainly in South Africa and Brazil, and in places where there's not much water, where they will not suffer from water shortage. Then the last thing about them is they are susceptible to fires. That's the most risky thing, because if a fire catches over there, especially in a eucalyptus plantation, since it's a resinous plant, it will explode and spread the fire faster. The other danger is if they are growing in river basins, and if firefighters come along, they are going to be dumping a lot of fire retardant chemicals, which when they enter the river system, they will really be very toxic to fishes. So we have to keep all these things also into account. Just like cotton is pilloried because it is because of its it is made with lots of water, fertilizer, and pesticides. Similarly, these are the drawbacks of these wood wood products. Okay, the process itself is now pretty eco-friendly once you get wood pulp. But prior to the wood pulp, yes, we have to look at that also and see how we can make that very sustainable and eco-friendly. Sustainability, I would say non-sustainability in the textile world has been quite recent. I remember in my childhood, my mother used to convert my long pants into short pants. She would convert my shirts into bags. There were no plastic in those days. So we would take a bag to the bazaar or, go and buy milk, which was sold in bottles in those days. And, banyans would be converted into mops. Then anything extra would be snipped into pieces and converted into quilts. So this is the way, in the old days things were done. We didn't have that many clothes. I remember my mother telling me, my mother was a needlecraft teacher, and she was well skilled in all the needlecraft techniques. So I remember telling me that as a child, she, I won't say a child, but as a young adult, all the, people in the locality, at least all the young girls in the locality would go together, buy one, than of cloth, and everybody would make the same dress. So it wasn't something that today everybody wants a different dress, Not only do we want a different dress, we want a different dress frequently. And that's the real problem. My colleague with whom I started Biodye, she came from a very affluent English family. When I say affluent, it's really very affluent. She was, her family was the third bank started the third bank in England about 200 years ago. And on her mother's side, she was royalty. But she told me that she got only 2 dresses every year, one for her birthday and one for Christmas. And those 2 dresses they wore to all parties. Well, they were the party dresses. So this whole fashion of, really changing your clothes all the time and trying to get clothes which are cheap, is a very recent phenomenon. And unless we retreat from that, we are not going to be able to solve this problem of filling up our landfills with these waste clothes or dumping. Like today in the Guardian, I read that 15 million pieces of apparel come into Ghana every week, of which 40% end up in the waterways, choking up their rivers and things of that type and landfills. So, they are dumped. When I think one African country tried to resist this dumping, the president of USA stepped in and threatened them to cut their aid. So the West dumping is part of their strategy to just disperse their pollution all over the globe. And I think we in India and all that should really resist that, and not only in India, all over the place, and shift our attitudes back from wanting a new piece of apparel all the time to thinking of reusing, refurbishing, redoing, and even at the design level, students from fashion institutes make their apparel in such a way that it can be re-altered and made into something new. So can I take, undo the seams and stitch it again in a different fashion, and things of that type. So that creativity has to come from their end. I think that's also very important at the learning stage. And we should not be shy. For example, my daughters have always worn hand-me-downs because they are the last of a long line of cousins. So when the cousins would outgrow them, they would use them, and they never felt bad about using them. They were good clothes. It would be a waste to throw them out. So I think this type of, and my daughter tells me that she does buy a lot of clothes. There are some now sites available where you can order used clothes which are properly treated, properly washed. And I don't see what is the harm in that. We go to hotels, we use, a towel which somebody else has used. We sleep on bed sheets and pillows which somebody else has used. So I don't see, as long as a piece of apparel is treated properly, we can essentially reuse it if it fits us rather than just throw it into a waste bin. Yeah, now what does the future hold for us? You see, we cannot overnight change. That is impossible. Okay, just like it took time for things to move from natural dyes to synthetic dyes. I remember my colleague again telling me when synthetic dyes first came into Britain, and they had ordered those new colored drapes. Her grandmother used to complain, such garish colors. So there was a resistance at that time also when we were moving from natural dyes to synthetic dyes. People didn't like them. Now they are so, you must remember one thing, you see, we were born and we've evolved to really look and appreciate natural colors. And therefore synthetic colors actually appear garish to us. So it's much more soothing even psychologically to stare at a pic, at some some drape which is in natural colors, because the colors are much more soothing. So we must move back into that, but that will take time. It won't happen overnight. You see, the whole value chains which were destroyed, the whole have to be rebuilt. You see, by this thing. But we have to do that one step at a time, and we can't start. We don't have the raw material resources also to basically make an overnight switch. Like for example, yes, certain colors can be easily available. The earth colors are easily available. The blues, we would have to find, much better agricultural techniques which will give an incentive to the farmer to grow indigo, because that's the only blue. We have to find other plants in place of madder, because madder requires a cold climate, and with global warming, at least in India, the area in which madder can grow is declining. So we probably have to go back to che, which was a tropical plant that used to grow on the in the coastal areas. But all that involves research. Okay? It involves investments. It involves time, and it involves developing new agricultural models, which essentially can be used, to compensate the farmer also adequately, and give us a sufficient amount of material at an economical rate. But let's be aware, you cannot get something for free. Okay, today what is happening is you pay something, you pay a cheap price for a piece of apparel, but somebody else is paying that cost, because the pollution that has been caused in making that is actually been distributed to a large number of people, either at the manufacturing site of the chemicals or the fiber, or at the dyeing stage, or at the end of its life when it is being put in landfills or just scattered across third world countries. Somebody is paying a price. It may not be you, but somebody else is paying a price. So if we go into sustainable methods, the price will all be upfront. So we must be ready to pay that price upfront. But when we do that, we'll essentially be sure that the next generation will see a better future for themselves, a less polluted future for themselves than what we are facing right now.